It's September 16th, 1988, in Hwaseong, South Korea. A rural town known for its farmland and rice fields. It's south of the capital city Seoul, with a population of less than 300,000. Unless you're from there, you've probably never heard of it. That is, until recently. The city has been shot into the spotlight with an increase in SA murder cases of women ranging from their teens to their early 70s. With 7 unsolved cases, the women in this region have been on high alert, with the only safe place being their home. The police are reporting the only common thread of the murders is women returning home from work or school late at night, all alone. So of course, a Hwaseong student, Park Eun-joo, age 14, wasn't worried about anything happening in her home. It's a stormy, rainy night, and Park has spent all day at school, studying to get into college. Exhausted, she came home to unwind so she could get ready for an upcoming entrance exam. Park dries off and heads to her bedroom to sleep. In her deep slumber, she hears a creak and wakes to a black silhouette towering over her. She screams, "Help!" But her scream was muffled by the intruder's hand. She's squirming, kicking her legs, trying her hardest to escape. And all she has to do is get her parents' attention. All sounds of her struggling are masked by the storm. She thought to herself, how'd this guy get over the wall? Can't my parents hear what's happening? What can I do? As she fades away, the last thing she could think is, I'm gonna die. A few hours later, her parents discovered her lifeless body, gagged with their own clothes and brutally essayed. Yoon Sung-Yeo had claimed his 8th victim. Today's story is a case spanning over 30 years and will include SA, torture, and some brutal details. As always, the Rabbit Hole team has gone through extreme lengths to ensure all material is as accurate as possible, as well as translating countless Korean news articles into this story. Also, in South Korea, the laws for public records prevent access to case files, so we will have to use placeholders for some of the imagery. With that said, viewer discretion is advised. It is now July 27, 1989. Yoon Sung-Yeo is a toolmaker for farmers. It's not a glamorous job by any means, but it pays the bills. Every night, he has the same routine. He gets off work, showers to get the metal shavings off, and relaxes to prepare for the next day. But tonight was a bit different. Someone is knocking at his door. Yoon limps slowly to the door because he contracted polio at a young age. As he opens the door, he is greeted by police officers. The police officers introduce themselves, sit him down and ask, "Where were you on the night of September 16th, 1988? They begin to question him about his whereabouts during the 8th murder, and Yoon has a tough time answering, stuttering and fumbling over basic questions, affirming their suspicions. The police handcuff him, take him to their car, and drive him to the police station. He says to the police, "I haven't done anything wrong. I have the same routine every night." They are certain they have the right man for the crime. I mean, the police evidence shows a 40% match with his hair, plus the metal shavings from work, and matching blood type B from the semen sample gathered from Park. As Yoon arrives in the interrogation room for questioning, he doesn't even think to ask for a lawyer. Now, he's not only disabled physically, but mentally as well, since he never had the privilege of receiving a proper education since he lost his parents at a young age. This left Yoon to fend for himself and to start working at the age of 11. Another day passes, and Yoon continues to plead his innocence, but the police officers won't listen. Now, at this time in South Korea, even if there wasn't sufficient evidence, a confession was enough to try for a crime. Yoon says to the interrogators, "I hadn't even tried talking to girls, because I thought no one would like a disabled person like me." The police decided to deprive him of food, water, and even force him to stand against a wall without sleep. This lasts for 2 more days. Yoon is exhausted, hungry, thirsty, and finally, he cracks. verbally admitting to the 8th murder and signing the confession papers. I can't even begin to imagine what he must have endured for 3 days straight. But the police did it. They finally had their man after 3 years. The case was solved, and Hwaseong would go back to being a quiet little town south of Seoul. Yoon is in prison for life, and all the women in the area can finally rest easy knowing nothing will happen to them again. Or so they thought. It's now November 15th, 1990. Kim Min-jung is a 14-year-old on her way home from school that day. It's something straight out of Silent Hill. It's foggy, quiet, and eerily creepy. It's been almost 2 years since the last murder, proving the real killer had been caught. Kim walks by herself, and she takes the same route every day, so her parents didn't feel they had anything to worry about. As she continues her walk, she has no clue she's being followed. The view distance is poor, and the street is only illuminated by a crescent moon. A figure dressed in all black rushes from behind her and attacks. She screams, but no one is able to hear her. The black figure's first instinct is to cover her mouth, as if he's done this before. He's a seasoned veteran and he knows what to expect. She would be found the following morning in a similar fashion to the other victims. Her hands and feet tied, gagged with their own bra, strangled, and essayed. The police are puzzled. It's been almost 2 years since the last incident, and the culprit is still in prison. They thought, this makes absolutely no sense. How has this happened, and why does the blood type match? Seems they hadn't actually figured it out. But Yoon would still continue to remain locked up, pleading every day that he was innocent and had nothing to do with this. This case would eventually go cold, and one more murder would be committed on April 3rd, 1991 to 69-year-old Kwon Soon-sang, putting the total down to 10 victims, 8 from when Yoon was locked up, an additional 2 more since. The police tortured Yoon into a confession. I mean, how dumb would they look if they said they had it all wrong? Well, let's find out. I did say this case took place over 30 years. It's now January 13th, 1994. Choon-jae is a lonely man. His life has never been the same since he was discharged from the military in 1986. That power of being a tank driver with a line of tanks behind him made him feel like a superhero. He wanted that power back. Lee and his wife had 1 child together, and after constant abuse, she left him. Bitter and resentful his wife left him, he put together his master plan. One evening, he's called his sister-in-law and wanted to see if she wanted to see her nephew. Of course, it's been so long. I'd love to see him, she said. Lee had it all planned out and waited to make his move. As she arrives at Lee's place, he welcomes her in, but she quickly realizes her nephew isn't there. At this point, I'd be thinking, what the fuck, and getting out of there. I mean, why would he lie about that? But she was 18. Maybe she had some trust in him. Even though she had been tricked, he makes small talk to get her guard down. Lee proceeds to ask, would you like some water or juice? His sister-in-law agrees. She says, yeah, I'd love some juice. Lee walks to the kitchen and spikes her drink with sleeping pills. He walks back to her, giving her the drink. He sits down across from her, makes small talk, anxiously shaking his knee, waiting for the pills to kick in. And finally, she passes out, at which point he essays and murders her. Knowing he would need to cover his tracks, Lee wraps her body in a blue tarp and hides it in a nearby hardware store's garage. Her head is wrapped with a plastic bag, and her hands tied with her torn underwear. Lee also decided to cover her body with items like stockings and bag straps just to make it a little bit harder to find. A couple days pass. Lee's phone is ringing. It's from his father-in-law. Lee reluctantly picks up the phone. The father's voice is heavy and distraught. He asks, have you seen my daughter? Lee lies and says, I haven't, but I can help you find her. The phone call ends after what seemed like an eternity. Lee is sure he got away with it. And honestly, seems like a logical way to throw them off his scent, in my opinion. Lee meets up with the father and the police are there to help investigate. The search party would ultimately end up empty-handed, and the body would be found 2 days later on January 18th by the employees at the hardware store. Now, Lee wasn't even a suspect, but suspicion arose when he kept asking police, how long is the sentence for rape and murder? Leaving him to be brought in for further questioning. Lee would of course deny any wrongdoing, saying that the police coerced him into making a false statement. Sure, buddy. Regardless, the evidence was strong, and Lee was convicted and sentenced to death in May 1994. The Supreme Court of Korea reviewed the case in 1995, and Lee's death sentence was reduced to life imprisonment. So, is Lee a copycat killer? Are Yoon and Lee secretly working together? Or is there someone else pulling the strings from the shadows? Well, my friends, this is where the story takes a turn. 24 years later, September 18th, 2019. Remember, this story started all the way back in 1988, with the first murders being in 1986. The statute of limitations is now passed, and the Hwaseong murders are cold, but technology has officially caught up, and the police have now found DNA linking the real murder to 4 of the cases, only to then realize the real killer has been in jail for over 20 years, and it wasn't Yoon. After the news came out of this break in the case, Yoon immediately filed for retrial. Sure, the statute of limitations had been passed, but Yoon's life had been ruined because of being a convicted killer. He deserved justice for losing so much of his life. Now, it took a couple of weeks, but Lee came clean and admitted to the crimes, including the 8th crime Yoon had gone to jail for. Now, in the retrial, Yoon expressed how the original investigation completely overlooked him being disabled. Come on now, there's absolutely no way he could have scaled that wall. Like, look at my man, he can barely walk. And to make matters worse, the evidence was wrong the entire time. Lee's blood type was O, and when they re-examined, they learned it was never B to begin with. Lee was extremely introverted, but working with the police to not only admit to the 10 murders, plus the murder of his sister-in-law, but also 4 other unsolved murders the police weren't even fully aware of, leading Lee to officially claim 15 lives in countless other rapes during his spree from 1986 to 1994. Now, the most interesting tidbit I learned about this confession is that the police put a map in front of him on a table, and he was able to point out exactly where all the murders had taken place, as well as where he dumped the bodies. Guys, this is absolutely insane. He was able to remember all of those details after so many years. The Hwaseong murders would go down as one of the worst crimes in South Korean history, a case spanning over 3 decades. But luckily, in the end, justice was served. Lee would continue to this day to spend his life in jail, and Yoon would be awarded a substantial sum from the state, reported at being over $2 million for 20 years of unjust imprisonment. Now, it's probably not the most glamorous thing that could ever happen to you, but at least he got something. But unfortunately, it's never going to make up for all of the years that he missed out on in his life. Man, that was a crazy story. Now, I never heard of this until my boy Kev was perusing the internet, and we were instantly interested in it. It almost seems fake to think about in the modern age the wrong person could go down for a crime and lose so much of his life to a mistake. I'm glad justice was served in the end, and shouts out to technology for finally catching up. So, did you see that end coming? Let us know in the comments. I sincerely hope y'all liked it. Subscribe if you want more, and until next time, try not to fall down another rabbit hole.